Hello, everyone. Today, we have the absolute pleasure of being joined by Rick Conlow, who is the CEO and founder of Rick Conlow International. Rick, thank you so much for joining me today. Really appreciate your time. How are you doing?
I am. I'm doing well, Harris. Thanks for having me on today.
No problem at all. Pleasure is all mine. I was really looking forward to our conversation today. A chance to deep dive into your background. Hopefully, we can all learn a thing or two and really get as much information as possible. So, I guess a good place to start would really be right from the beginning. So, what does the beginnings of your career really look like? How did it pan out? Did it always look around entrepreneurship and business? Is that something you fell into? Maybe if you can walk us through your journey of getting to the position you're in today.
Well, it sounds good. I actually went to college to be a baseball player
Okay.
and a teacher. That was my fallback. And unfortunately, I didn't become a professional baseball player, but I did teach for, I don't know, 3/4 of a year or so. And then I was contacted by an organization that had educational programs as their product. And they gave me a role, and I kind of worked my way up in their office in Minneapolis and became their director. And then they had another office in St. Paul, and I directed that. And eventually they hired me for their corporate office out in DC. And they had 55 offices in 22 states. So for early on, right out of college, it was fantastic experience because I was doing things, quite frankly, I wasn't qualified to do. And so it was kind of fast forward learning.
Yeah. But
But they also provided lots of training and support to teach you to be a consultant, a salesperson, a leader. So I was like, every day was brand new day because it was something new to learn. Managing people. When they promoted me, I had no management experience. I had 10 direct reports in 2 offices. So, but I learned fast, and uh, you just go through lots of experiences, and you figure, you know what, I better start reading and taking courses, which I did, and it sure made a difference. Now, from that experience, I was able to get a job with a company uh, back in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area where I'm from. And as a chemical manufacturing, they hired me to come in to develop training programs for them. They had 30,000 distributors across the world, and they wanted to train them and teach them management skills so they can sell the products better. And so
yeah.
that was, lots of travel. And again, early on in my career, lots of responsibility and but a lot of training too, because they taught us to be consultants there. And I was just going, 10 programs a year. Every month there was something going on to learn while trying to get results for the company. So it
Yeah.
was fast forward, just like that in my career, but it was invaluable experience. And that's where I got the entrepreneurial bug, is that the chemical manufacturing company, their founder, Bob Conklin, had written some books, and his father had started the company by he was a chemist and started the company, Conklin Company, they called it. And Bob took it over when his father passed away and built it into a bigger company. And he always talked about starting your own business. And our whole HR team kind of got the bug. We'd have meetings saying, we should do that someday. And in 5 years, 4 out of the 5 of us started their own businesses.
Wow.
Yeah.
Impressive.
And it really made a difference. Now, I was one that didn't do it right away. I was approached by another company, and they owned 6 organizations in the Twin Cities, and they wanted someone to come in and improve their customer experience. Apparently, they were not very good at that. And so they brought me in to do that as a manager, and I'd work with all their different companies. And I remember, like, the second day I was there, the president of the company looked at me and went like this: Rick, if the numbers go up, you've got a job. If they go down, you're out of here.
Very standard, isn't it?
Good news is I stayed with them 10 years, and within 3 years, we had achieved #1 customer service, high employee engagement ratings in our market area, and improved business 20%. We ended up winning a bunch of awards, and we had momentum. One day, the president brought me in his office and said, Rick, you're doing pretty good. I think we got a business here. Let's start a company together. So we started a trading and consulting company.
Wow, interesting.
So we could take what we were doing in his company and take it elsewhere. So I did that with 5 years from him. And then a business or a colleague that I knew at one of my other companies, we had some meetings, decided to start our own consulting firm. together.
Got it.
And we did that back in, what was it, 98, somewhere around there. And he had an office in his home. I had an office in my home. We had some connections, got some clients, and we were remote back then and on the road all the time. But because of our business experience of getting bottom line results through HR activities, we got some really good clients, and we go in and improve sales, and you could measure the metrics. You can improve employee engagement and measure the metrics with turnover or employee engagement scores. You can measure the metrics, of course, on customer service, customer retention length, as well as the survey data. And so when we bring that to our clients, say, here's what we accomplished. How are you doing in those areas? We look at their numbers. They were kind of here and we were up here. But we got some good clients fast and we were off and running and been doing essentially that business since then, since 98, except I rebranded it when my business partner retired a number of years ago. So that's kind of how it all came together. And it's been an exciting process, much more than I ever thought possible.
Amazing, amazing. Now, I guess if you look back on that journey, if you had to pick one moment that you're most proud of, or you are most grateful of that you went through that because it allowed you to kind of evolve as an entrepreneur and kind of be able to adapt to the next level of growth, what would you sort of say to that? What if you had to pinpoint one moment that really stands out?
Yeah, I would go back to that company that had 6 organizations, 6 different branches to it. And the reason was I didn't know anything about their industry. And I'm in charge of improving the customer experience and the employee experience. In fact, I learned about 6 months later that all the management team are taking bets how long I'd last because they knew I wasn't from their industry. They had to pull the money. They had to pull the money on me that I wouldn't make it. But we did. And I think one of the things that I did that helped win the trust of the organization. So I didn't come in and say, I know it. I came in and listened. I went around to different locations, each manager in their office, and I asked, what are your challenges? What are your people problems? What are the customers telling you? And I just listened, and we had good conversations. I began to build rapport and relationships with people. So when I came out with a program or a strategy, they knew me, and I wasn't blowing smoke. And some of the stuff that they were talking about was in the strategy. And so we started implementing it. We got results. And in 3 years, as I mentioned, we became #1 in all product lines. By then, that pool was gone.
Yeah.
And I was one of the team. We were rocking and rolling, ended up winning 33 quality awards. So it taught me that what was most important was the relationships that you're working with, not your knowledge necessarily. You can always learn if you don't know something, if you're one, right? But it's the relationship and the capability to collaborate and partner as opposed to say, do it because I said so, or the boss is going to yell at you, or I'm going to yell at you, kind of thing.
Absolutely. No, very well said. Now, I guess if we can hone in more on the market side of things, industry trends and shifts and perhaps patterns you're seeing, what would you say to that? Is there some shifts or patterns that you've noticed in the last few years? Is there some trends or shifts you're noticing coming up, and how do you think they're going to pan out? And then if we're talking to, I guess, business owners, how would you advise them to navigate these changes that happen? What would you advise to navigate this storm of change?
Well, first thing, I would just say everything's more competitive because, it's you don't just have your market anymore. It's the world, right?
Yeah,
So that's
absolutely.
one thing. And then the other thing is the importance of people. Now, there's a lot written about that, and everybody believes that people are important, but you got to have a culture that is accepting of people. And I've seen the last 5 years is that there are more and more bad bosses and more toxic workplaces. The ones that are good are way up here. They've really figured it out and they're doing it right, like the Fortune top 100 best companies, that kind of thing. And the ones that are bad are really down here. They just haven't bought into it. So that's an issue. And then on top of that, of course, is all the new technology and AI. As a company, you have to learn that. There's no doubt. And you have to use it. But on the other hand, I think what's happening is there a trend to discount the people. And yet the people still need to use AI.
Yeah.
And so you got to invest in your people. I think the companies that I'm seeing are going to use AI and leverage it better are those who still invest in their people and value people. And they'll just ramp it up above and beyond everybody else. So there'll be a big gap, not much middle ground. Those struggling down here and those just hitting it out of the park there. That's what I'm seeing.
Absolutely. Amazing. And very quickly, to get your thoughts on another massive trend, probably the previous trend from AI, and that's social media, right? Online presence, social media, where perhaps founders, execs didn't really present themselves out there. They're normally behind closed doors, in the businesses. Whereas now, if you don't see a founder or an exec on LinkedIn, on social media, it's kind of like, what's going on? So how important has social media been to your success? How important do you think social media is to the success of a business? And what are some challenges that you'd advise business owners to be mindful of when it comes to social media, online presence, and kind of founder-led, content?
Well, my daughter now is a social media manager.
Ah,
She
interesting.
has been for, I don't know, 7 years now. And so she's taught me a lot about how that all goes in the marketplace. Certainly, social media is important. And in fact, you got to monetize it. And you can monetize it. In her role, they've got sales goals
Yeah,
related to that. And they're really good at it. And I think you need to be able to do that as well. You got to get as much of it as you can. You probably have to hire an outside service if you can't afford to hire somebody in to do it for you. And it's just part of the game. If you don't do it, you're missing out. A new
perfect.
way of advertising and promoting. And it's just growing bigger and bigger.
Absolutely. Very well said. Now, I guess if we hone in more on the business side of things, maybe a deep dive of exactly, who you work with, what kind of problems you help solve, and maybe if we can touch on what are some areas of the business that are going really well and you're, most proud of. It could be anywhere from sales, marketing, operations, client, team, etc. And what are some areas of the business that you're perhaps having some challenges in and some hurdles that you're looking to overcome that maybe somebody can relate to?
Yeah. Well, our company, the purpose that we defined was to elevate people first through servant leadership. And we just saw time and time again, companies say they believe in people, but they don't put up what they say. They don't follow what they believe in. They lack integrity on that. And what do I mean by putting people first? Well, provide them the resources, provide them the training, provide them the recognition and praise, them well, and communicate all the time, every day, all the time, variety of ways. And then, just treat them with respect and care. You don't have to, one manager I had said, I'm all for employee engagement as long as they come up with what I want. And another guy, I remember this is one of our clients, they had this VP of sales out west. And I was doing a meeting in Phoenix with one of their branches. And he came in one day kind of unannounced and said, get everybody together. And so they got everybody together. I know there's 75 people at that location. They're all in this big room. And he walks in and he goes, if you're not on the bus, you're off the bus. And he's walking around, everybody saying that at the top of his lungs. And he'd point at somebody and say, if you're not on the bus, you're off the bus. And he did that for about 10, 15 minutes, then stood and looked at everybody, locked eyeballs with him and walked out. That was his motivational speech. Well, everybody's there, just hate the guy. Yeah.
Mm,
But he thought he was ramping up the troops. And quite frankly, he had pretty good business out in the West Coast. But he had a lot of potential that he was missing. That's why I was there. The COO had sent me there to figure out what's going on out there.
yeah.
And eventually that guy got fired and they changed their approach and they did even better. And see, people have tremendous potential. And I came across the guy named Luke Akins who jumped out of an airplane at 25,000 feet with no parachute.
Wow.
Yeah. Now they had set it up. There was a net supposed to catch him if he did everything right. And it caught him. Now,
Oh,
I know about you. I'd never even try that, even if I had a net. Would you? But the point was, people can do incredible things. It may not be that, but at work, whatever their job is, if you create the right circumstances, most people, not
yeah.
all, most people will rise to the occasion and they'll go above and beyond what you think is possible. That's why our company, as we focused on people through training and recognition and communication, those kinds of things, planning, getting input, all that, they would improve sales 58%, 75%, 212%. Their employee engagement numbers would go from 0, which what the average rating on the ENPS score is, about 15. And our companies that we would work with would get 50 to our highest was 84%. That's like unbelievable. The scale is minus 100 to plus 100.
Oh,
Okay.
interesting.
And so they'd have it on the plate. We do the same thing for the NPS because the ingredients were there, the culture was there, and then the people believed in it and they would go for it instead of just having the CEO saying rah rah rah. Everybody's or just about everybody's going rah rah. You know what I'm
Got
saying?
it.
Big
Absolutely.
difference.
Makes sense.
Big difference. And so that's a big thing that organizations need to do today. But there are challenges. Most companies just don't know how to do it, and you have
Yeah,
to sustain it. Anybody can do it for a month, but can you do it for a year? Can you do it for 5 years? For 10 years? That's the difference.
absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I guess if we look towards the future, what are some goals that you've set out? I know the business has done really well, it's grown massively, and you're in a position where you're doing really well. But what does the future look like? If we're talking maybe the next 6 to 12 months, is this a metric-based goals? Is it impact-based? And then I guess if we go even beyond that, if we're talking maybe the next 3 years, 5 years, maybe 10 years beyond, what kind of impact or legacy do you want to leave, and what kind of footprint do you want to leave in the industry? And people kind of look back and really be, appreciative that that's the kind of legacy you left. What would you say to that?
Well, one of the things I'd like to do is create 1 million servant leaders in the world. So, we've probably worked with 4 to 500,000 managers and leaders over the time. So we got to ramp it up. One of the ways we're doing that is creating online resources that people can do on-demand training on their own. They don't have to wait for their company to provide it for them. In fact, they should. I would give this message to every manager, regardless of their level.
Yep.
Okay. From the CEO down to the first time supervisor is this: keep learning. You should be attending 10 to 12 programs a year, either those that your company will pay for, and most are only going to give you 1 or 2, then do it on your own and go online, get the resources, keep learning, because what will happen is you'll quickly distance yourself from all the other managers because they haven't put in the time. They haven't studied. Professional athletes, if they only did training for 1 month in a year, they wouldn't make it. They've got to train every month. Yeah, you take some time off for regrouping and recharging, but they got to train all the time. That's what makes them champions. That's what makes them the best of the best. The top 1%, actually, professional athletes are top 0.1%. And as a manager, you got to be aiming for that 1% or 0.1%. Just keep learning, keep studying, and you'll be able. That's what got me to ramp up my results faster. Other managers didn't do it. I did it. I got the promotions. And when we go into companies, they go, well, we try to do performance management, but everybody's busy. So, we do it once every year or maybe twice a year, 6 months in a year. That's not enough. That's all you're talking to your people about on performance. You don't have a clue where they're at and you're in trouble. You got to be doing that every month. And then every day in your communication, you should have a sense of what they're doing well, and you're recognizing what they're not doing so well. You're coaching them. And it's got to be, live on Saturday night right now, all the time. And that's where you get the results. So that's what we're doing. We're getting into those digital training programs and providing them. And then we're still doing, live engagements, and we're helping companies do that because they need a lot of help in that area. What I've discovered, Harris, is that HR directors today have become more police oriented. They're looking for where the employees aren't following the policies, particularly the managers. And so then they're getting into trouble, and you got to call HR for help to get it fixed and blah, blah, blah. And what the HR should be doing is they should be building the team up. Okay. They should be on the management side and the employee side and creating policies, not to check and look over their shoulder and be micromanagers, but to help them move forward. And
Absolutely.
the companies that do that, the coaching, the training, the support, the recognition, the communication, they're the ones that are ramping up results faster. And that's what we try to help them do.
Absolutely. Amazing. Now, I guess, what is the biggest piece of advice you've ever received? It could be from a mentor, it could be from a business partner, it could be from family even, or perhaps the biggest lesson you've learned the hard way, that if somebody's listening and they could be going through a similar challenge, it may change the trajectory of their career or life. What would you say to that if you had to pick one?
Well, I can think of a story. One of the managers I worked with, one of the senior managers, the name was Jim, and Jim been there 40 years. So I thought, I'm going to go talk to Jim, see what I can gain from Jim. I said, Jim, and they would use Jim to go into areas of the company that were failing, and he'd turn it around in a few months. And I said, Jim, how'd you do that? And he leaned back in his chair like this and he laughed and he said, I didn't go to college. And I said, oh, come on now, Jim. He says, well, let me tell you, here's what I learned is I got to have the ear of the people and I got to have their trust. So when I'd walked into my business every day, the first thing I did was not to check my messages, not to make phone calls, not to call clients. I went around to talk to employees for a while. Could be 15 to 30 minutes just to start the day, different locations, different offices, different levels. And I just say, how's it going, Aaron? And we talk. And Harris might say, oh, it's going pretty good. And you say, well, Harris, I heard you were on vacation. Where'd you go? What happened? You know, we talk about them and I wouldn't bring up business then. Now, eventually they might, but I wouldn't force it. Because I just wanted to listen. I want to get a feel for how people are doing. And then if they had ideas, they're going to tell them to me. He says, after you do that a number of times with people, they start talking to you about problems they never would get. I don't know about you. I start doing that. You know, I had one company I was working with. They said, we got a union problem here. I said, really? Okay. So I just need a little time to talk to the union. No, you can't talk to them. You got to go to arbitration. No, just let me talk to the employees. So instead of going into the front door of the companies or their warehouse, I'd go in the back, come in the back door, go in and talk to people using Jim Malo's idea. And I'd just go around and start talking to folks in their area and listen to them. And boy, you learn a lot after you do that for a while. And then when you do come in the front door and walk in and say, hey, we got a problem, they go, hey, Rick, how you doing? What's going on? What do you need?
Absolutely.
The relationship in the beginning is more important than the results.
Absolutely. Very well said. Well, Rick, absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I hope you've enjoyed, and I'm sure everybody listening has found a lot of value. So massive thank you. Is there any closing comments that you have for people listening, team members, clients, people who might want to reach out? Is there anything you want to shout out or let people know about?
Well, I would just say, as I mentioned, we have online resources. So that's on my website, rickconlow.com. You can find that. We have 2 books we're particularly proud of. We have 22 books, actually, but 2 of them in particular have made the biggest difference. One's called The Superstar Leadership Model, and the other is The 5 Dynamics of Servant Leadership. And they kind of go hand in hand. And we have a lot of other training that goes around them. But as I said to people, keep learning, and you can look at our stuff and get ours. There's lots of other stuff out there to help. And just keep doing that all the time, and you'll find that it accelerates your career. John F. Kennedy said, leadership and learning are indispensable to one another.
Absolutely. Well, Rick, thank you once again, and thanks to everyone who's tuned in, and we'll catch everyone next time.